So going on to lesson 11 then, this is still concept 4, support technologies enabling tools. Now we're going to talk in a bit more depth about some of these tools and technologies. We're going to look at the role of customer self-service and self-help in support operations. We're going to look at some of the common uses and advantages of self-service technologies. We're also going to talk about some of those self-healing technologies, and we're going to explore social media, what tools are available and what we should consider if we're going to use social media as a support channel. So we mentioned ACD, your automatic call distributor. This can be used in conjunction with IP telephony, so voice over internet protocol. Your ACD routes calls based on predefined processes or algorithms. So a call comes in to your ACD system. It might come in from outside via your company switchboard, or it may be an internal call that comes in directly. It hits that ACD system, which then uses processes and algorithms to decide what to do with the call. It might have an AVR routing system in it where, based on what the customer wants, they press a button and it routes them to the right people or the right teams. It might use skills-based routing. Same thing, based on what the customer is talking about. Or it could use some algorithm such as send the call to the agent waiting longest without a call, or send the call to the agent waiting longest without a call who's had the least number of calls today, or even more complex algorithms depending on your requirements. If there are no agents available, then it queues the call, holds them, waiting for an agent to become available. It might then announce to them how long their wait time is or where they are in the queue. Then it eventually delivers them to an analyst and agent. You may have your primary team and you may have an overflow team, and your ACD would know when to go to the overflow team. What the routing rules are will depend on your organisation. Most organisations are using digital voice systems, so this is internet protocol telephony. And that not only allows us to have voice, but data and video transmission. So now we can actually see people as we're talking to them, if you're using something like Skype for Business, for example. Common ACD features include the call distribution, as we said, skills-based, first available, longest available, call queuing. It's going to offer very advanced reporting, very granular reporting. Analyst availability tracking, how long analysts have been available to take calls. The volume of calls to the service desk, the average speed to answer, or average response time, as we said before. That abandon rate, how long people have been on calls, talk time, how long they've been spent on hold. Call frequencies, not just the number, but when they've happened, so that we can identify the peaks and troughs throughout of our day. And if we understand that, we can adjust staffing levels accordingly. Now, if we've got things like voice over IP, we've got ACD, and we've got data systems like our IT service management tool or other databases holding customer information, we could use something called computer telephony integration, CTI, which can integrate all of these things together. If you've ever called an organisation, they've greeted you by name, they seem to know an awful lot about you, and they can give you offers targeted to your requirements, they're probably using CTI. CTI identifies the customer either based on the number they're calling from or something they enter as part of the introduction. So it could be your credit card number, for example, or your account number or a PIN number. But from something, it identifies who you are. It then goes and searches all the relevant databases that it's been integrated with and presents to the analyst or the agent you speak to all the relevant information. So it will pop up on their screen a partially populated call form with the customer's details in it. Details about the equipment you use may already be there. It's going to present them with information about your history as a customer. So they'll know about any tickets you might still have open. They'll know about, if it's an external company, they'll know about your purchasing history. So you'll get information from multiple systems presented to you in one coherent view. And this allows us to deliver a very personalised service. This allows us to assess statistics from across multiple platforms in real time. So we can look at voice data in relation to the tickets raised off the back of those voice calls. How many emails has resulted? how many call escalations. Because we've hooked them all together, we can then report across all of these things rather than having to report on voice and incidents and requests completely separately and then try and connect them together. So it can give us a very coherent view. But CTI is very costly. You're only likely to find this in larger organisations that deal with significant volumes and want to give that very personalised service. More common technology, self-service. So self-service technology provides customers with facilities to manage their interactions and find answers to common problems, all of which helps us on the service desk because it reduces the volume coming into us. That leaves us more time to deal with more complex issues or to deal with higher volumes without having to increase headcounts. Self-service is available 24/7. It's available when the service desk isn't operational. This means that if a customer is working from home in the evening, for example, and they notice an issue or have a request to make, they can do it there and then without having to wait and remember to do it when they get back to work. This can relieve pressure on the service desk because there are fewer inbound contacts from which we then have to log tickets. We get that amount of time back to be dealing with other things. It gives customers another support channel. So if our phones are busy, they've got another avenue that they can use. And remember, some people would rather just go online, log their requirements and send it to us than actually talk to us. If customers can do that part of the job themselves, then it lowers the overall cost of support. Or if we're not actually saving money, it allows us to deal with more things without having to increase the costs of the service desk. Needs to be easy to access for customers. If it's difficult for them to get to, they just won't use it. But if it's easy to access, then people can fit it into their schedules. They don't have to wait. We could use it as a way to give automatic updates. So instead of a customer having to ask us about the progress of their ticket, they can go online and check progress at any time. The emphasis is then on us to make sure those tickets are being kept up to date. A lot of these benefits are for us in IT that simply allows us to either take on more complex issues because we now have the time available, or we can do more proactive work because we have the extra time. It does allow you as analysts to focus on higher value work. Self-help, well, this can help customers resolve simple issues themselves. Of course, you've got to bear in mind that not every customer will want to do that. It may be natural for you to do it, but not everybody is the same. But the customers who like to try and solve things for themselves, who feel that that's the fastest way to do things, who want to be self-sufficient, then they'll be very welcome. If customers like to be self-sufficient, if they want to be able to learn and resolve things for themselves, then they're going to like this particular feature. It can be a cost-effective way to deliver consistent solutions for repetitive issues. It may lead to faster resolution. Certainly leads to customers being independent and self-sufficient if they want to be. This might improve customer satisfaction and productivity, but it's got to be useful. It's got to be the things that they can do for themselves and that they want to be able to do for themselves. It could include giving them access to online documentation. It's certainly empowering for customers. It might improve their experience, but not always. It really depends on how well it's done. And remember, if a customer spends time trying to use self-help, but then still has to pick up the phone to call you or go online and log a ticket, in their mind, this is a slower service. If they've spent 20 minutes on it already, by the time you get it, in their perspective, you've had that issue for 20 minutes. IT has had that issue for 20 minutes and has yet to resolve it. So it can have an impact on the customer's experience if it's unsuccessful. Disadvantages, well, customers got to have access to accurate and relevant information, which means there's a higher cost of information maintenance. What we're giving them needs to be up to date, fit for purpose, trustworthy, reliable, usable, expressed in ways that they can actually use. It can be challenging to keep all of that up to date. If you don't have really good knowledge management processes, it's going to be a significant overhead. You can have a perceived loss of personal service. Particularly if we push people trying to use self-help before they contact us, they may feel that we don't want to talk to them. You've heard people say it, I just want to talk to a person. in those kind of situations, then it can detract from the customer experience. And it might always take them longer to resolve it themselves, simply because they're not as confident, they're not used to doing it so often, and that itself might negatively impact the customer experience. As I said, if they try for 20 minutes, still can't fix it and have to contact you, then they're not happy. They're already disappointed, and that's going to be a challenge for you as an analyst. Some examples of self-help, well, we've talked about IVR and AVR-based systems, automatic password reset technologies, knowledge bases, application-based help systems, whether they're inbuilt or web-based, FAQs that you publish and other fact sheets, the online training and tutorials we spoke about, and an online knowledge base. They're all forms of self-help. The challenge can sometimes be making these work together coherently. You've got to make sure, if you're putting this information out there and the same information is in different places for different types of customers, you've got to make sure that they're all updated. So they need to use a centralized source so you can update it in one place and it goes out everywhere that it's needed. If you've got contradictory messages out there, then your self-help is not going to be effective. Better still than self-help is self-healing technology. No human being has to do anything at all. Self-healing tools identify that an exception condition has occurred. It initiates corrective action to restore a system to a functioning state. It's automatic, it's dynamic. Nobody needs to be involved. Antivirus, as we said earlier. That will detect a virus, wipe it, and then report that it's done it. Customer has no awareness that it's even happened. You may have self-healing technologies as part of your monitoring systems, where in something like SolarWinds, for example, you might have it set up to detect error conditions. For example, if a log file gets too big, it automatically archives the log file, creates a new one so that there's no performance impact to the system, and then it reports to somebody, or maybe even automatically logs an incident or an event to say that that's happened, so that somebody can then look at it and go, well, why did that happen? We've made sure there's no interruption to service, the customer won't notice, but somebody still needs to do something about it. So it could be customer end user, or it could be infrastructure. Either way, the job is the same. Fix things, correct things, without needing human involvement. You've got some examples there of your self-healing technologies, antivirus, ScanDisk, and those event alert monitors and diagnostic tools. Benefits: reduced cost of support, reduced need for reactive support, improved utilisation of IT staff. We can spend more time doing higher value work. Increased productivity for the customer and for us. There are things we don't have to do, so we don't have to spend time doing them, but the customer then has no interruption to service. Faster recovery and implementation of workarounds. Higher service availability. Remember, keep the business working to the highest possible level, and self-healing is key to that. Reduced resolution time, because a system can do it very, very quickly, and that provides the seamless service provision that the business is after from its IT tools. So the last technology we're going to talk about is social media. This is relatively new in the world of support. Some organisations have adopted it faster than others. All businesses are using some form of social media, but not always in the support environment. So social media is the use of technology combined with social interaction to create online communities, share knowledge, connect people to information faster, using those internet-based communications. You've probably heard of things like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and a whole host of others. So is your company using any of these? Well, even if you're not using them in support, your marketing and sales department are, because it's a way for them to engage with your business customer community. Social media can be used for collaborative working. It has a lot of benefits, but it also needs a lot of control, particularly if you're going to use a public social media platform. Some basic business principles if we're using social media at work. To use these tools effectively, we need to understand that there's a difference between traditional media and social media. The organisation needs to have a strategy for engaging with its market, and even internally we need to understand what that strategy is, because remember, you'll also be supporting their access to these things. If you don't understand how they're using them, you won't necessarily assess the impact correctly. but also how the organisation is using social media is something we need to understand. So if we're going to use it internally in support, that we're also following the same kind of strategy, that we're aligned. The purpose is to build a community in order to share knowledge. You could use this as a form of self-help, for example. You could have an online forum for general support or for particular applications or particular technologies where your users, your customers and IT people can all be involved in helping raise everybody's abilities within that particular form of technology. It could connect your end users to super users, for example, or subject matter experts, so that simple questions could get answered, they can share their experiences, and that can be helped to drive the knowledge that we provide them, but also reduce volume to the service desk. Social media has to be an ambassador for the brand. This is how your company uses it in the business world. It's a way it gets its brand and its brand image and what it stands for, its values, out there to a larger marketplace than traditional marketing media will use. Social media has to be transparent, and you've got to be able to analyse the content. You've got to understand what content needs to be out there, what people are using, what they're saying. No company can engage in social media on an ad hoc basis. You either have to commit to social media or not. So first and foremost, in support, we need to understand what is the business strategy for social media. We've got to follow the organisation's social media policy. Now, it may say that the only departments that can use it are sales and marketing, or business communications and marketing, for example. And that's fine, that tells us a very clear picture. We can't use this internally. But if they're saying which social media channels are approved for business use, then we know which tools may be available to us. We need to familiarise ourselves with the culture of the different social media communities, because they're all slightly different. They all have a different tone. They all have different ways of engaging. Anything we put out on social media has to be original. It's got to be interesting or entertaining. It's got to be relevant. First and foremost, it has to be honest. You put something out there that is false, people will jump on it very, very quickly to show you how wrong you are, and that can damage your brand reputation. It takes a lot of responsibility and good judgment to engage professionally with social media. And remember, your contributions reflect on the organisation. So if we're using them in support, anything we do in social media as part of our support operations is going to reflect on the organisation. And we have to protect the brand and its reputation. You could also say that internally we have to support the service desk's brand and reputation, so that people trust the information that we put out there. Certainly only use the social media tools authorised by your organisation. Some are riskier than others, so follow the guidance provided. If engaging through social media, always be respectful and courteous, the same as you would if the customer was on the telephone or emailing you or dropping in to see you. Social media is informal by its nature, so you've got to communicate in a human voice. It's about people engaging with people. So you don't want it to be robotic. You don't want it to come across as automated. You want it to be natural and conversational, but it's still got to be professional. And that's a hard balance to achieve. You've got to be respectful of other people's opinions when sharing and collaborating. But that's part and parcel of teamwork, so that should be relatively easy for us. The key with social media is to focus on listening first, but we said that's a basic element of all communications. 2 ears, 1 mouth, use them in that proportion. So focus on listening before contributing and communicating. As a business, we have to respect confidentiality, copyrights and trademarks. Particularly if we're going to post videos, if we're going to post links to articles, if we're going to post photographs, we've got to make sure that we have the rights to use them. While an individual on social media may not get sued for breach of copyright, not that it won't happen, but it's less likely, but certainly if a business is breaching a copyright, it's likely to lead to some form of litigation, or at least a higher payment for what we're going to use. And remember, if you're ever unsure about the policies and practices around using social media in your job, ask advice from your manager. So we're going to do a few don'ts. These are the same whether you're using it professionally for your own professional image. You may be out there on social media, on something like LinkedIn, for example. Or you may just be out on social media personally. So whether it's for business or whether it's for personal use, the same things apply. It's about the etiquette of social media. Don't spam on social sites. It's the quickest way to get you unfollowed. Don't overwhelm followers too frequently. You don't want to be putting out the same information over and over and over again. You don't want to be filling up their timelines with yours. It's likely to get you unfollowed. Never reply or make commitments on behalf of the organisation without following its guidelines. If you're not authorised to respond on behalf of the organisation, don't. Now this can include your personal profiles. If you see someone put something on social media about your organisation and you feel it's wrong or unjust, you may be tempted to jump in and tell the person that they're wrong. It's a very natural reaction, but again, you're not authorised to do that. It may lead you getting a lot of negativity over that social media platform, which is not something you want to put yourself in the way of. Now, if you can just point someone at an appropriate website, that's probably okay. But be very careful. It's tempting to get involved, but be very careful because you're an employee, you've got to protect yourself. Never use bad or antisocial language. The standards of professional communications apply whether you're operating on behalf of the company or if you're engaging in a professional social media platform. Think about the image you're projecting. Never be forced to connect with someone online without checking them out first. You should never be pressured into this. From your personal profiles, think twice before making a professional connection on your personal profile. Once you do that, you've got to be very careful about what you put on your personal profile. Never feel pressurized to say who you work for. Check your company's guidelines. They may say, don't say who you work for on your social media platforms. Check the policy. Some organisations want you to say who you work for because it helps get their brand out there, but you should never feel pressured into doing it. Just remember, once you mention your company and your personal social media platforms, you may be coming up on company news feeds, and certainly whatever you do on that platform then will reflect upon your organisation. Try where possible to keep your personal and your professional profiles completely separate.